Okay, let's be honest for a sec. Have you noticed how AI voices are getting so real they're kind of creeping everyone out these days?
Yeah, it's true. It's amazing how realistic it's gotten.
It really is. But what if I told you AI isn't just, mimicking voices anymore? It can actually create entire podcast conversations, like from scratch. Like this. We're going to, dissect the process. So what actually
Means the final product, the podcast, isn't just some podcast producer thing for me. What does that even mean for an AI? How can it be a producer?
Okay, so a speaker roles within the podcast itself.
Oh, wow. So you have multiple voices, even if it's just based on... Think about casual phrases, those little side comments, even a well-placed question here and there to keep...
AI editor, but one that won't compromise your unique voice and style.
But the way you might describe that process in a document, it could be kind of technical, right?
Yeah.
You've got that human connection that really brings it all home.
Okay, let's be honest for a sec. Have you noticed how AI voices are getting so real they're kind of creeping everyone out these days?
Yeah, it's true. It's amazing how realistic it's gotten.
It really is. But what if I told you AI isn't just, mimicking voices anymore? It can actually create entire podcast conversations, like from scratch.
Oh, really? That's wild. How does that even work?
Well, get this, you feed it, like your notes, your research, even that unfinished draft you've got hidden away somewhere on your computer, and boom, out comes a full-blown podcast episode.
Wow, that sounds pretty futuristic, but is it just reciting what's in the document, like a really advanced text-to-speech?
That's a great question, and it's actually way more than that. We're talking about taking your raw ideas, the heart of your work, and structuring them into a dynamic, engaging back-and-forth conversation, kind of like what we're doing right now, actually.
Well, I see what you mean. So it's more about capturing the essence of a conversation rather than just reading a script.
Exactly. And the tool that's making all of this happen is called NotebookLM. And it's really interesting. For this deep dive, you didn't just send us an article about NotebookLM. You actually uploaded it to NotebookLM.
Whoa, so we're really going meta with this one. We're having it analyze its own capabilities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very meta, right. But that's what makes this so fascinating. We're going to crack the code and see how NotebookLM transforms those words into a podcast. Something that's ready for your listeners.
I like it, demystifying the AI. So are we talking like a step-by-step breakdown? I think a lot of people listening probably don't even know where to begin wrapping their heads around something like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Think of it like this. We're going to dissect the process so you understand not just what it does, but the how behind all the magic. You might even get some ideas for how to use this in your own work.
Now that would be cool. Everyone loves a good productivity hack.
For sure. Now, to really get into it, picture this.
Yeah.
You've been working on this document, right?
Yeah.
Let's just say, for the sake of this example, that it's about a scientific discovery.
Okay, I like it. So we've got this groundbreaking discovery.
Right. And you're writing about how this discovery could change, everything. You've got all your thoughts laid out, your insights about its impact, the debates surrounding it, the whole 9 yards. So, what actually happens when you take all of that and feed it into NotebookLM?
So is it immediately spitting out a podcast episode? Does it take time to process?
Well, first, NotebookLM doesn't just skim your work. It really digs in to understand it.
Oh, okay. So it's not just looking at the words themselves, but trying to actually get what you mean.
Exactly. It breaks down the text, figures out your key arguments, and even starts to get a sense of your writing style. Basically, it does its homework.
That's amazing. It's almost like it's trying to learn from you so it can better represent your ideas.
Right. It's like it sits down with a cup of coffee and really tries to understand what you're all about and what you're trying to say with this document.
That's huge because it means the final product, the podcast, isn't just some generic summary of the information. It's actually a reflection of your unique perspective and expertise, which is crucial. Otherwise, it's just information anyone could give.
100%.
Yeah.
So now the AI's got the gist of your document, right?
Yeah.
What do you think happens next? Does it just go ahead and start recording a podcast?
That's a good question. I feel like there needs to be a bit more to it than that. You wouldn't just start throwing ingredients together if you're trying to bake a cake, right?
Yeah.
You need a recipe. So what's the AI's recipe for a good podcast?
You already know the answer. NotebookLM knows a good podcast needs structure, right? It can't just be random information thrown together. And that's actually where it shifts gears.
Yeah.
It goes from being a researcher to being your very own podcast producer.
Wait, hold on. Break down this whole podcast producer thing for me. What does that even mean for an AI? How can it be a producer?
Okay, so imagine you're having a lively conversation with someone, a friend or a colleague, anyone, right? And the conversation just flows naturally. There's an intro to set the scene, you dive into the main points, and then eventually you wrap things up nicely.
Yeah, that's how most good conversations go. There's a natural flow to them.
Right.
It's like there's like an unspoken structure that keeps things interesting.
Exactly. And that's what NotebookLM does with your content. It takes all those raw ingredients you gave it, like your ideas and insights, and arranges them into that kind of structure. That way it feels like a natural, engaging conversation, not just a bunch of random points.
So it's setting the stage for a really thought-provoking discussion. So it's not just spitting out information in a monotone robot voice, right?
Not at all. It actually goes even further than that. It'll assign different speaker roles within the podcast itself.
Oh, wow. So you have multiple voices, even if it's just based on your own writing.
Yeah. And that's what makes it feel so much more dynamic and engaging to listen to.
Yeah, for sure. Think about it. Would you rather listen to a conversation or a lecture?
100%. A conversation every time. I mean, that's what makes podcasts so enjoyable. It's like you're listening in on a great conversation.
Exactly. And you know what else really sells that conversational vibe?
What's that?
Those little details that we all throw into conversations that make them feel real. Think about casual phrases, those little side comments, even a well-placed question here and there to keep the listener hooked.
Okay, so we've got this AI crafting a podcast like a pro, but let's not forget it's your content that's the heart of the show,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. It's easy to get so caught up in the AI does everything idea, but that's not what's happening here at all. NotebookLM is all about showcasing your expertise, making you sound incredible.
Now, that's what I like to hear. So how does it actually go about weaving your work, your writing, into this conversation it's building?
It's surprisingly seamless, actually, first and foremost. Your content is the priority, always. And I'm not talking about just a sprinkle of your ideas here and there. We're talking a solid 60 to 70% of the final podcast being directly from your material.
Wow, that's like the bulk of the episode.
Exactly. Your document is like the bedrock for this entire episode. And it achieves this in a couple of really clever ways. Sometimes it'll pull your most insightful sentences, straight from your document and into the conversation. That way, it's like your words are speaking for themselves.
I like it. So it's identifying the best parts of what you've written.
Yeah. And other times, it might rephrase things a little bit, just to keep the flow of the conversation going while making sure it's still faithful to your original meaning.
It's like having an AI editor, but one that won't compromise your unique voice and style.
Exactly. And this is a good one for those parts of your document that might be a little, technical or complex. NotebookLM can actually transform that jargon into something everyone can understand.
Now, that's interesting because not everyone is writing about simple topics. Can you give me an example of what that looks like in practice?
Okay, so let's say your document explains how users can tweak the AI's output to guide the conversation.
Oh, interesting. So you're saying, if you upload a document, you actually have some control over the final product. You can tweak how the AI interprets things.
Precisely. But the way you might describe that process in a document, it could be kind of technical, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, what NotebookLM might do is take that technical explanation and turn it into a metaphor that anyone can grasp. Something like tweaking the AI's output is like pruning a tree. You're guiding how it grows.
Okay, I love that. And that's something I think we can all wrap our heads around.
Exactly. It makes it relatable and intuitive. And this is actually where things get really, really interesting because it's not just about repeating your content verbatim. It's about enhancing it.
Okay, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I was waiting for. So tell me, what's so special about this enhancement stage?
Well, think about those conversations that really stick with you long after they're over. What makes them so memorable?
That's a good question.
Usually it's because of those unexpected connections that come up or those insightful examples that really drive a point home, right? Or even just stories, anecdotes that bring those ideas to life.
Yeah, totally. It's like you might forget the exact words someone said, but you remember how that story made you feel or how it shifted your perspective on something.
Exactly. And that's what makes this technology so powerful. It's not just about spitting out information, it's about making it memorable. So, for example, let's say your document mentions someone like Alan Turing, right? A real trailblazer in AI.
Yeah, everyone knows Turing.
Right. So your document might focus on the more like technical side of his work, but NotebookLM can actually take that and weave in something like a captivating anecdote about Turing's life. And just like that, you've got that human connection that really brings it all home.
That's so smart. It's like suddenly you're not just learning dry facts anymore. You're getting a glimpse into the minds of the people behind these big ideas. It makes it way more interesting.
Way more interesting. And you know what else? It doesn't even stop there. Remember those analogies and metaphors we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, the pruning the tree example, right? That was a good one.
Exactly. NotebookLM uses those throughout, and not just to explain your ideas, but also to make sure the listener can follow along and really grasp the concepts. It's like it can sense when someone might need an extra bit of explanation.
Like having a built-in tutor who knows exactly when you're about to zone out.
Yeah.
I love it. So, okay, let me see if I've got this straight. We're saying that NotebookLM takes your document, restructures it into a more natural conversation, sprinkles in your original words, and it enhances everything with these extra details and examples so it's more engaging for listeners.
You got it. That's exactly it. But it gets even better. Like imagine for a second that your document is super focused. Let's say it's just on the technical details of some new scientific breakthrough.
Okay, I can see that. A lot of research papers are like that, super dense and focused.
For sure. Well, what NotebookLM can actually do is broaden the scope by like naturally introducing other related ideas that might not have even crossed your mind.
So it's almost like having a brainstorming partner who can make these amazing connections and really add layers to your work that you wouldn't have thought of on your own.
Exactly. Think of it like this. It's like you've got a whole team of like expert podcast producers working behind the scenes, taking your ideas, polishing them up, and turning them into something really compelling.
This is seriously mind-blowing. I feel like this tech could empower anyone to take what they know and share it with the world in such an engaging and understandable way.
Absolutely. And that's what's so exciting about where we're at with audio content today. You don't need like a fancy studio or years of experience to share your story anymore. Tools like NotebookLM are giving everyone a voice.
So to everyone listening out there, what amazing document, or why are you going to turn it into a podcast now that you know this is even possible? The possibilities are seriously endless. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you in the next one.